Do you have a weighted vest? They're having a big moment in health and wellness right now. And my sister encouraged me to get one. The minute I started using it, I could not stop thinking about how much it reminded me of today's topic. I get a lot of coaching requests for things like, how do I have a difficult conversation? How do I speak up when my heart is pounding? How do I recover after I've been overcome by emotion in a meeting? And there is a foundational, universal answer to all of these questions. That is what today's episode is about. So go ahead, grab that weighted vest and go for a walk or sit down with a cup of coffee, a pen, and a notepad, and I'll be right back. Hi, it's Jamie here at the Leadership Laboratory, where ambitious women come to build confidence, skills, and community so they can lead on their terms as their authentic selves. As we kick off today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already so that you never miss an episode. All right, let's get to it. Well, welcome, listeners and lab cats. Welcome back to season 2. Here in the Leadership Laboratory, we experiment, we learn, and we grow. And I learned a few things from season 1. So I am thrilled and honored that you are back for new and improved episodes. Okay, so the weighted vest. When I started using mine, I noticed something almost immediately. The weight doesn't change. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, thank you, Captain Obvious. 10 pounds is 10 pounds. And of course, that is true. But what's fascinating is that some days I barely notice the weight. And other days, that same 10 pounds feels a lot heavier. Usually it's on the days where I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed by something, like I'm training for something I didn't sign up for. That weight feels dynamic, even though, of course, it's not. And as someone who loves a good metaphor, it occurred to me that a weighted vest is the perfect illustration for how emotional intelligence works. So here's the picture I invite you to envision. You've got your weighted vest on, and depending on the day, depending on the circumstances, how heavy that vest feels will change. And here's the plot twist. Every single person around you also has on a weighted vest. Your team members, your leader, your direct reports, your family, your friends, that person sitting across from you on a Teams call, everybody is wearing one of these vests. And oftentimes we forget that. We forget that we're carrying one, and so too is everybody else. Everybody is navigating something. We can't always tell that just by looking, though, nor can we tell exactly how much weight that vest has. The weight can come in the form of workload, of pressure, of a hard conversation, a worry from home, feedback that was delivered in a spicy way, or that text. Did you ever get that text message that says, we need to talk, with zero context whatsoever? Some days you can weather those things and it feels lighter, but other days it feels crushing. In the exact same way that everybody has a pulse, something that we can't see, everybody's also got that vest. Well, in this episode, I'd like to introduce you to Kate. I'm going to share the story of Kate. She came to me not long after a significant promotion. Her team size expanded considerably, and she was now in higher level leadership meetings with bigger stakeholders. And she was also managing life, her family, her 2 kids' soccer schedules. And on paper, total win. I mean, she'd been shooting for this promotion, aiming for this for a while. Internally, her vest started to feel like it was weighing about 200 pounds, which, as you might agree, is a little difficult to carry around. Well, Kate is who I had in mind when I was thinking about today's episode, and I'll come back to her throughout our episode, because her story is one that I think a lot of you will see yourself in as well. Emotional intelligence is the skill of noticing, realizing, and honoring your own vest first. It's something that high performers, something that people who care deeply about others can sometimes forget to do for themselves. Raise your hand if you're guilty on that. Sometimes you forget to honor your own weighted vest, but understanding that vest and how it affects your mood, your tone of voice, your patience, your decision making, that is one very important layer of emotional intelligence. And this is where the leadership piece comes into play here. Extending that same awareness to everyone around you is part of the relationship management of emotional intelligence. Because when you start to understand your own load, right, the one that we're all carrying and its dynamic nature, it's like you start to get not just night vision, but like day vision, super fueled day vision. You start to realize everybody walking around you with the vest, almost like a scene in a movie. Can you picture that? With that awareness alone of seeing everybody walking around with a weighted vest, you just boosted EQ by a couple points. Isn't that cool? I mean, it can EQ can move pretty quickly with just a little bit of an intention. I spent years in heavily male dominated industries in rooms where I was the only woman and where the unspoken rule, or maybe it was in something I imparted upon myself, was, keep that vest invisible. Don't let them see the weight. Don't be affected by other things. Be certain, be fine, brush it off. And I can tell you from hard earned experience, that approach it's not just exhausting, it's expensive. It can cost you clarity, connection, mental health, well being, and even your credibility as a leader. And today, as a certified EQ coach, I'll tell you that the women who advance, who really advance sustainably with teams who trust them and careers that are not just full, but fulfilling, they're not the women who are weightless by any means. They're the women who are intentional about leading under load. And this is a skill, it is learnable. And that's what today is about. So let's talk about what this can look like in day to day life. And let me say this first, you can lead from any seat at the table, no matter where you are on the org chart. In fact, a lot of people get called up as leaders before that title is even in front of their name. And as long as you are interacting with other people, you've got the opportunity to lead. So maybe as you're listening to this, you just got promoted. Maybe you stepped into a bigger role. Maybe you're leading a team for the first time, or a bigger team, or a team that is more complicated than the one you had before. Or maybe you're an individual contributor still trying to figure out where your place is in all of this. And on paper, all of that looks like a win. You're expanding, you're growing. It is definitely a win. And it can also feel really uncomfortable at the same time. Both things can be true. You can be excited about where you are and overwhelmed at the same time. And that second guessing, is that when that shows up sometimes? Is it the email that's rewritten 4 times as you step into a new role? Definitely. Is it when the 2 a.m. replay of the meeting you had 12 hours ago is still playing in your head and wondering, did I say the wrong thing? That voice that gets louder the more successful you get. Well, I see you. You are definitely not alone in that. And I want to actually congratulate you if you've experienced any of that, because that discomfort means that you are playing bigger. You are stretching out of your comfort zone. Every time you experience discomfort, know that that means growth is on the other side. And if it feels like a weakness or it feels like a shortcoming, it is absolutely not a flaw. That is growth doing its thing with you. So for Katie, this type of growth showed up as pressure, enormous self-generated pressure. The bigger the room, the more important the stakeholders, the higher she set the bar for herself. And the fuller her calendar got, leadership meetings, team check-ins, soccer pickups, the less time she had to actually think, to breathe, to prepare in the way that made her feel like herself, like authentic leadership self going into the room. What I see in the leadership lab, and what I want you to hear clearly, is this. Anytime you're in those circumstances that feel overwhelming like that, it's not weakness. It's not evidence that you don't belong, that they hired the wrong person, or that you outkicked your coverage, or that you don't know what you're doing. It is actually completely normal. It's a very normal, very human response to growth. And it has everything to do with emotional intelligence and the intentional development of it. You spend years developing technical skills, degrees, certifications, reading the right books, even the right textbooks. But almost nobody ever sat us down and said, here's how emotions affect all of that. Here's how emotions are woven into performance. Here's how unprocessed fear shows up in leadership. And here's how the feelings that you're having right now are completely valid and how they're shaping every decision you make. That conversation is the one that I want to have with you here today. So let's start off with a working definition of emotional intelligence because that term EQ gets thrown around a lot, and I want us to build here from the same blueprint. So emotional intelligence, or EQ, the Q stands for quotient, the emotional intelligence quotient. It's your ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and to read and influence the emotions of the people around you. EQ is not merely about being warm and fuzzy. It's not about being the most likable person in the room or even about being nice. It is a set of skills, completely learnable, completely developable skills. And I would say the most important leadership skill that you can build because it's foundational to everything else. EQ has four distinct pillars. And I'll name all four of these here so you have the full picture, and then I'll share where we're going to spend our time together today. So, the first pillar in emotional intelligence is self awareness, knowing what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and how it's affecting you in the moment. This is the foundation. Everything else is built upon this, having the emotional awareness and vocabulary to name what you're feeling. The second pillar is self regulation. So now that you've been able to name the feeling, how are you managing it? How are you managing your emotions under pressure? How are you responding instead of reacting? Are you responding instead of reacting? And this is where the practice of EQ lives. Then the third pillar transitions from internal to external. And this one is called social awareness. Said simply, this is reading the room. Like how good is your ability to read the room and understand what others are feeling, even and especially if they haven't said it. It's like being able to see the vest on everyone around you. Or if you're old enough to remember what a mood ring is, I think about social awareness like a filter that you would hold up in any room. And as you look through it, you can detect the mood of those there with you. And then the fourth pillar brings together the other three, and this is relationship management. It's using all of the above of what I just mentioned to communicate effectively, to navigate conflict, to inspire, and to influence. And this is where the leadership skill in particular compounds. All four of these pillars matter enormously. So again, it's self-awareness, self-regulation, and then external social awareness and relationship management. And today we're going to focus on those first two, the ones that you have the most control over, self-awareness and self-regulation, because you can't regulate what you haven't noticed. Can't in the same way you can't manage what you can't manage what you don't measure, you can't regulate what you haven't noticed. And it's hard to lead others well if you haven't learned to lead yourself first. These two pillars are foundational, and they're exactly where Katie's work began. And here's why this matters, especially right now at this moment in time. IQ gets you hired, and EQ gets you promoted. Studies have shown for decades that emotional intelligence is 4 times a stronger predictor of leadership success than IQ. And in a world where AI is taking on more and more of the cognitive, the IQ activities, the analytical, the data processing, the things we used to think were uniquely human advantages, EQ is not just valuable, it is essential. This is how you make yourself indispensable at work. And there's a fantastic new book called Open to Work. The tagline is a book on thriving in the age of AI. And that is a refreshingly ironic title because this is a book that is very much advocating for how much humans matter here in the age of AI. It identifies 5 qualities, 5 human qualities that AI simply cannot replicate. The 5 qualities, they all start with C. I love alliteration. I'll share them with you now. The 5 C's, maybe even want to guess for a second. What do you think the 5 C's are that matter as human qualities? Okay. First one is creativity. Second is curiosity, my favorite superpower. The third one is courage. The fourth one is communication, and the fifth is compassion. And when I first read that list, when I first saw the authors talking about this, again, creativity, curiosity, courage, communication, and compassion, I was relieved and pretty fired up actually, because these five things, they're what is woven into the DNA of everything that we do in the leadership laboratory. These are not just soft skills. That term makes my skin crawl. These are human skills. And every single one of them is rooted in emotional intelligence. So when you're sitting in that high stakes meeting, maybe terrified that somebody's going to find out that you don't have an answer or that you're going to say the wrong thing in front of the wrong people, what's actually happening at the EQ level? Well, what's happening is that your emotional brain has registered a threat. And if you've seen the movie Inside Out, it does a great depiction of this. There is a threat that has been registered. And in this case, it might be the threat of being exposed or of not being enough or of not knowing the answer. And your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do for survival, to protect you. The difference, though, is that our brains are not great at differentiating between an actual threat and a perceived one, and that difference is really important to detect. So the alarm sounds whether you're in physical danger or you're presenting to a room full of people who, let's be honest, they might have other things on their mind. Anyhow, the likelihood that everybody is focused on, are you going to get this right or wrong, is not high. Yet your brain is registering that situation similarly to if a saber-toothed tiger is looking you in the eyes. Not physical danger, but emotional danger. And when emotional danger happens, very commonly in meetings, the alarm is just as loud as if it were physical danger. For Katie, she felt like that alarm was going off constantly. Every big meeting, every new stakeholder, every moment where she felt like she was supposed to have an answer and she wasn't sure if she had it, that alarm was not evidence that she was failing. It was evidence that she's human. And it was the starting point for her self-awareness muscle to kick in. The alarm is never evidence that you're failing. It's never saying, hey, you're doing this wrong. What that alarm is suggesting is that you're human. And the awareness of emotional intelligence, it gives you the tools, it gives you a framework so you can hear that alarm and use it in an informative way without letting it be in the lead, without letting it drive, and certainly without letting it shut you down. When you hear that voice, the good old self-doubt in there, the voice that says, I don't know if you should be doing this. When you hear it, here's where you've got a lot of power, listeners. When you hear it, you can steer it. When you hear it, you can redirect it. You can point it in a direction that is serving you, that is helping you step into your full capability, that is helping you pat self-doubt or imposter syndrome on the head and say, oh, you're cute. I'm going to go a different route, even when you fully don't fully know what you're doing yet. And there is a ton of power and freedom in that. The mere identification and realization of, oh, I've got this alarm sounding. There's a feeling that is associated with that. Before we get back to this episode, I want to invite you into my Leadership Lab community. The Lab is a monthly coaching community for professional women who want to deploy their confidence when it matters the most, when your heart is pounding and you know you need to speak up, when you can't avoid the hard conversation any longer, when it's time to advocate for yourself, go for the promotion, or lead under pressure. Leadership takes practice, and the best place and time to build those skills is in a safe environment before you need them. Inside the lab, you will receive live coaching from me on real situations that you're facing at work, and you'll instantly feel the support and hear the perspective of other women working through the same kinds of challenges. You might be relieved and surprised to know that you are not alone, and you'll feel empowered knowing you've got a loyal crew instantly cheering for you. Go to jamiemckinney.com/lab to request a free pass so you can test drive the lab. And while you're there, receive real-time support and genuine connection with a room full of women practicing leadership right alongside you. I hope to see you there. Now back to the episode. So buckle up your weighted vest with me here for just a second, because I want to talk about what's at stake, and then we'll expand on what to do next. We'll get to the good part, how to rise above. Emotional intelligence is not just about feeling more comfortable at work. It's much bigger than that. It is about your career trajectory. It's about the soundtrack that you play when you drive home, right? Is the soundtrack that you're playing, and I'm using that metaphorically, is it the one that is angry or depleted or disappointed or ruminating on the day? Or is it the one that's happy and satisfied and jamming to tunes that you love, and the one where your highest and best self is just giving you a hug and saying, hey, great job today? Well, that second one is always available to you. And that's the one that we're building toward. Because only good things happen when you're focused on that version of you. But this takes training. It takes discipline. Every time fear makes a decision instead of you at your highest and best, your authentic self, every time doubt rewrites an email or skips a meeting or deflects a compliment, those moments add up. They compound over time, and that effect can be significant. The promotion that didn't get applied for, or the visibility that wasn't claimed, or the decision that was deferred to somebody who had less information but more confidence to make the decision in that moment. And this toll is not just personal. I mean, when the vest is heavy and we don't have the tools to manage it, it shows up. It shows up in our tone of voice. It shows up in our patience, everybody's favorite virtue. It shows up in our availability. The team feels it even when they can't name it. A team that you're working with can feel it even when they can't name it. And low EQ doesn't just cost us, it costs the people around us. I actually had somebody who called me out on this yesterday. I had a series of things going on, and I was still in the phase of processing the emotion. And as we were on a call together, she said, "You okay?" And I said, you could tell, couldn't you? And she said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And imagine though, when you're not with somebody without that type of trusting relationship where you can call each other out in a loving and respectful way like that, what's the potential impact of that? What's the ripple effect? Well, that's what Kate felt, right? The pressure she was putting on herself was starting to affect how she showed up for her team. And not because she wasn't capable, she absolutely was, but because she had no protected space to think, to breathe, to be strategic, to recognize the emotion that she was having and then choose to regulate it. The vest was heavy and she was pretty much white knuckling it alone. So, okay, deep breath. Katie's shed the vest. We're going to shed the vest. We're going to do that here because here comes the pivot. And this is the part that I genuinely love. Here's where you've got the power to not just succumb to this, to not just think, well, that's just the way it is. No, emotional intelligence is not merely a personality trait. It's not something that you either have or that you don't, you're born with or you're not. It is a skill set. And because it's a skill set, it's something that truly anyone can learn, can practice, and develop. And that means you are never stuck. And the women that I see transform the fastest in the leadership lab, they're not the ones who are already the most emotionally intelligent. They are the ones who are the most curious. Curiosity, going back to that superpower, they were curious about their vest. They were curious about what they were carrying, how much it weighed, and how it was affecting them, and what they could do differently. That space of curiosity is so powerful because that's where we can learn. And the opposite of curiosity is judgment. And when we're judging, we're not budging. I say that a lot in my EQ workshops, that when you're judging, you're not budging. When you're judging yourself, when you're judging others, when you're judging, it literally shuts off the part of your brain where learning happens. But good news, when you step out of judgment and into curiosity, asking questions, being present, that door to the learning vault in your brain, it opens back up. So the identity shift that I want to invite you to try on is this. If you've ever beaten yourself up for being emotional or having feelings at work, maybe stop asking yourself why you're so emotional and start asking yourself, what are those emotions telling you? Instead of looking at feelings as the failure or the problem, because they never are, start looking at them as if they were data points. What is the problem that's unfelt, unexamined, unmanaged, or ignored? The feelings are the data. They are brilliant. They are beautiful. They are important indicators that you can absolutely use to your advantage. And what's wild is that in EQ workshops, we actually talk about feelings and emotions not as being good or bad or positive or negative, but simply as data points. The fear that shows up before a big presentation, that's data. It's telling you this matters. Not something to feel ashamed of or that being nervous is bad. No, it's data. The irritation after a hard conversation, also data. A boundary was crossed or a value was violated. It's an indication of that. The overwhelm that creeps in on a Tuesday for no obvious reason. I went through a period of life where that was happening to me all the time. I couldn't figure out why in the moment. Also data. Data that something needs your attention. And this is your body's way of flagging it. Your body will always speak your truth louder than your words. And emotional intelligence doesn't mean you stop feeling things. It means you get really good at reading the data and then choosing your response instead of simply reacting to it. Knowing that you've got an opportunity to pause and make a decision that will work in your favor. And as you start to build that muscle, something really interesting happens. The overthinking starts to quiet. The second guessing loses its grip. That person on the QC team who always gets under your skin, you stop letting them steer you and you start showing up with the kind of steady, grounded presence that makes people want to follow you, that makes you want to follow you. Or I bet if you were to think of your favorite leader right now, I bet one of their characteristics was grounded presence. They had an ability to help you feel calm and present just in being around them. So here are 4 practical shifts that you can put to work right now, this week, even today, because as we know, this is not about just listening and thinking and reflecting. It's the doing. The doing is where the transformation happens. And that is what I want for you to feel the power of that transformation. Okay, so shift number 1, name the vest. Before the high stakes conversation, before the big presentation, any moment where you start to feel the weight getting heavy, pause and name what you're carrying. Not to wallow or complain about it, of course, but simply to acknowledge it. Research shows that simply labeling an emotion, such as I'm anxious right now, or I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed, that tightness in my chest right now, oh, that means my feelings are hurt. As you start to step into that labeling, you're activating the prefrontal cortex of your mind. And the prefrontal cortex, that's where the logic sits. That's where the thinking part of your brain exists. And it reduces the intensity of the feeling when you put the label on it. Naming is not a weakness. Naming is neuroscience. And a rhyme that I love to attach to this is name it to tame it. And once you name it, you also claim it. When you give it that vocabulary, you give it some understanding, and you start to dial back its power over you. Oh, that's such a good feeling. You will feel the weight instantly lift. Now, will it make the feeling disappear entirely or the weight go away completely? Of course not, but it will make it manageable. And manageable is where you can lead from. So that's shift 1, name the vest, name the emotion, name the feeling. Shift 2, separate the feeling from the fact. And I dare you not to feel empowered after this one. So when doubt or fear shows up, ask yourself, what is actually true here? Not what the fear is telling you, but what do you actually know to be true right now? See if you can segment and separate the two things. Almost like put on your investigator report hat, just the facts, ma'am, focus on just the facts. When you strip away the emotion, what's left? Assumption-free facts. And assumption-free facts carry far less emotional weight than the feelings that are wrapped around them. If you want to take this to the next level, write it down. That makes it even more powerful, more tangible. When you get it out of your head onto paper, you're also freeing up some mental real estate. The mental separation between what's real and what's fear generated is one of the fastest ways to reclaim your clarity. Shift number 3, regulate before you respond. A deep breath is not just a soft suggestion in those situations. It is a physiological intervention. It tells your nervous system, hey, I'm okay. I'm not actually in physical danger. And it keeps the logical brain activated so that you are in responsive mode instead of reactive mode. This is executive presence. This is good leadership, staying in that responsive mode instead of that reactive mode. And the next time you feel the vest getting heavy in real time, middle of a meeting, hard conversation, here's a great tip that you can use. Take one breath before you respond. And Jefferson Fisher shares this tip. He's the author of The Next Conversation, so you might want to look him up. He suggests making your breath your first word. Visualize it that way. When you're in that space of teetering on emotional overload, before you speak, before you respond, take that breath. Do it with me right now. Take that breath and consider that it is the opening word of your next sentence. This sounds like a small shift, but it changes everything. Okay, so far we've got name the vest, we've got separate the feeling from the fact. Then we just shared how you regulate before you respond. And then shift number 4 is practice the curiosity move. There's curiosity coming up again in our conversation today. And this one is for how you lead other people, especially the ones who throw you off guard or get under your skin. The next time someone reacts in a way that surprises or frustrates you, before you get critical, get curious. Before your brain immediately goes to, oh, this is happening again, or here this person is up to their old tricks. Before you do that, instead, double down on curiosity. Visualize their vest. Ask yourself, what might they be carrying that I can't see? How heavy is their load right now? Now, I want to be very clear about this. This does not mean you're agreeing with their behavior, and we're definitely not excusing it here. But your job isn't to figure them out. Your job is simply to acknowledge, hey, there could be a weight there that you can't see. And in doing so, that helps you approach the situation with curiosity instead of judgment. And that helps you stay in the driver's seat. You don't just change the conversation in that moment, you change yourself. And I promise you will not regret this. And I'm going to get fired up right alongside you when you share your success story with me, because this is one of the most powerful moves a leader can make. And it's something that once you do it successfully, you will get that hit of dopamine and say, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for this to happen again, because this has been so rewarding. That's where that flywheel starts, and it's pretty darn awesome. That is also exactly where Katie's shift happened. She realized that the pressure that she was putting on herself, the weight that she was carrying solo, white knuckling through every big meeting, that was coming from a gap in self-awareness. She hadn't named what the vest was. She hadn't separated the facts from the fear. She was reacting instead of responding. And her mindset, her attitude, her calendar, all of it reflected it. Back-to-back meetings, no room to breathe, no space to think. So naturally, Katie was reacting instead of responding. So she made one powerful, deceptively simple decision. She started blocking strategic thinking time, protected time on her calendar every single week. Not as a nice to have, but as a non-negotiable. She protected it vehemently. And I don't know a single successful leader who doesn't have that time protected on their calendar. For Katie, this was the time where she named her vest, where she got clear on facts versus feelings, where she did some exercise to proactively regulate emotion before high stakes moments, and where she gave herself permission, and she even visualized showing up in the room as the leader that she already is, instead of the version of herself who was just running on empty and managing from fear, because none of us operate well in that space where we're trending toward E on our gas tank. That shift did not require a personality transplant, of course, for Katie. It required self-awareness and self-regulation, the first 2 pillars of EQ, and it changed everything about how she started to lead. So before I wrap up, I have something for you, because I know some of you are listening and thinking, okay, but where do I sit with emotional intelligence? Is it mine high? Is it low? Like, what does this picture look like? Well, let's get that answer for you. I put together a quick EQ assessment. It takes about 5 minutes, and it'll give you a real snapshot of where you're strong, where there's room to grow, and what to focus on first. This is my gift to you as a certified EQ coach, and it's a great place to start. So if you want to assess what your EQ is, go to jamiemckinney.com/EQ_quiz. EQ_quiz. There's a link in the show notes too, along with some other links in the show notes to Jefferson Fisher's book, a previous episode about the nervous system regulation, and some other things to go deeper on that shift number 3 that I mentioned. So you got a lot of great resources in the show notes, including that EQ assessment. So I want to leave you with this. The leader who trusts her own read on a room, the one who makes decisions under pressure and doesn't have a subsequent 2 a.m. spiral, the one who has difficult conversations from any seat at the table without dreading them for 3 days ahead of time, the one who knows her own vest well enough to recognize when it's affecting her, and the one who has awareness and the tools to work with it instead of struggling to carry it alone. Well, that woman is not somewhere ahead of you in the future. She is already in you. She has been here the whole time. She simply needs the right tools, the right practice, and if she wants to accelerate this, the right community. EQ, as I mentioned, it's not just a personality type. It's like a muscle. There's a practice to it. And just like any practice, it gets stronger every time you show up for it. And when this works, and it can work pretty fast, you get that hit of dopamine, you get a smile on your face, you get that pep in your step, and you can't wait to do it again. I mean, this is not work. This is fun. And in addition to that, it is momentum. It is momentum starting right now. Here's what changes when you step into this. You stop building your career around managing how you're perceived or worrying about what others think, and you start building it around what you're actually capable of. You stop overthinking and you start trusting yourself primarily, and then others too. You stop apologizing, you start owning. The shift is powerful and it's felt quickly. This is what emotional intelligence does for you. And it is available at this very moment, not some future version of you who has it all figured out. And so the question I want to pose to you now is, what will you do to commit? What action, what experiment will you take based on what I shared with you today? Because remember, after all, this is a laboratory. And if you want to go deeper on this work or even hold yourself accountable for your experiment, or if you want help coming up with what it would be, the Leadership Laboratory is where we do this together. It's a community of ambitious women, many of them in male-dominated industries, building exactly what we talked about today, the emotional intelligence, the 2.0 confidence, the skills, and the community to lead as their authentic selves. So I'd love for you to come check it out, even give it a test drive. There's a link in the show notes, and we'd love to have you there. And to give you a teaser of what's coming up next in the Leadership Laboratory podcast, we are talking about one of my favorite tools in my entire coaching toolkit, positive intelligence. I like to think about PQ, positive intelligence, as EQ's brilliant sibling, and whereas EQ helps you understand your emotions, which is incredibly important and foundational, PQ helps you understand your thoughts, particularly the ones that keep you stuck or show up as blockages. And if you've ever noticed your brain working against you, if you've heard that inner critic, that mean girl voice, the alpha bully, or if you've ever had the thought, oh, if I could just get out of my own way right now. I know I've had that. If I could just get out of my own way right now, you definitely do not want to miss this episode. You can think about it like spraying WD-40 on your thoughts or anything that's holding you back. This will help you get unstuck. Until next time, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with one woman in your life who needs to hear it. That is how we grow this community, one incredible leader at a time. Keep experimenting, keep growing, and focus on progress over perfection.